Before landing the role of Black Panther, Chadwick Boseman was almost one of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy turns 10 years old today, so here are some things I bet you never knew about it. The story of the Guardians begins in 1968 when Marvel Comics creator Roy Thomas had the idea for some super guerrilla soldiers fighting off communists. Thomas then handed the idea to Arnold Drake, who along with Stan Lee changed it to an interplanetary superhero team, and the Guardians were born. Yondu is the only character from the original team that would make it into the 2014 James Gunn movie. Marvel Comics would have different iterations of the Guardians across the 70s, 80s, and 1990s, followed by Dan Abnett and Andy Landing's 2008 series, which served as the main inspiration for the movie. Around that time, Marvel Studios was getting started, and one of its early initiatives was the Marvel Screenwriters program, in which the studio hired staff writers to write screenplays based on lesser-known Marvel characters. One of those writers was Nicole Perlman, and in 2009, she asked to write a Guardians of the Galaxy movie because of her fascination with space and science fiction. She later said Marvel was taken aback by her choice. Even they knew that the characters were pretty obscure. Perlman would later become the first woman credited as a writer on a Marvel Studios film. She wrote 10 drafts of Guardians from 2009 to 2011 and had various combinations of the team, including a draft that had the original 1968 members. But eventually, she settled on Abnett and Landing's modern Guardians team because they were the most fun. Abnett and Landing's team included Star-Lord, Rocket Raccoon, Groot, Phyla-Vell, Gamora, Drax, and Adam Warlock. Early drafts of Perlman's script centered on Nova, but Perlman's boss at Marvel, Nate Moore, suggested that she change it to Star-Lord. So Perlman made Peter Quill kind of like Han Solo, she added in 80s and 90s music, and started the story on a desolate planet. Kevin Feige first mentioned the possibility of a Guardians of the Galaxy movie to the public in 2010, before officially announcing that the movie was in development at Comic-Con 2012. At the time, ComicBook.com called the Guardians B and C-list level Marvel heroes. In 2010, James Gunn was hired to rewrite and direct the Guardians movie. Gunn was a micro-budget filmmaker known for dark comedies like Super and Slither, who had come up through the B-movie house Troma Entertainment under Lloyd Kaufman. Oh, and he had also written the 2 live-action Scooby-Doo movies. Gunn beat out future Ant-Man director Peyton Reed for the job. At the time, the official logline for the movie said it would be about a US pilot who ends up in space in the middle of a universal conflict and goes on the run with futuristic ex-cons who have something everyone wants. Obviously, a lot of that changed because Gunn would rewrite most of the movie. One draft of the script revealed that Emperor J-Sun was Peter Quill's father, like in the comics. But Joss Whedon, who was consulting on most Marvel movies at the time, hated that choice and suggested that Quill not be part of some royal line. There was also some debate internally whether Rocket Raccoon should even be in the movie. The thinking was he might be too cartoony. But Kevin Feige loved the character. Perlman's original script had Thanos as the main villain, but Gunn and Joss Whedon made him more of a shadowy figure working in the background. Gunn wrote the collector's explanation of the Infinity Stones in an hour and a half, and only found out later that Marvel was also considering using the Infinity Stones in its overarching story. Later Infinity Saga filmmakers would reference Gunn's explanation as a guide. Gunn also changed Perlman's 80s and 90s songs to the 60s and 70s tracks, and introduced Star-Lord's Walkman and mixtape. And Gunn crafted the soundtrack from a massive playlist while he was writing the movie. Chris Pratt beat out the following actors for Star-Lord: Joel Edgerton, Jack Houston, Jim Sturgis, Eddie Redmayne, Zachary Levi, Adam Brody, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Michael Rosenbaum, John Gallagher Jr., and Glenn Howerton. Glenn Howerton would have been James Gunn's second choice after Chris Pratt. Lee Pace also auditioned for Peter Quill before getting cast as Ronan. James Gunn was initially not interested in casting Chris Pratt, but casting director Sarah Finn set up a meeting for the two of them, after which Gunn was immediately convinced that Pratt was the right guy. Pratt underwent a strict diet and training regimen to lose 60 pounds in 6 months, and he had to get special permission to take off from Parks and Rec to shoot the movie. Dave Bautista beat out Isaiah Mustafa, Brian Patrick Wade, Jason Momoa, and Chadwick Boseman for the part of Drax. Boseman would later join the Guardians of the Galaxy as T'Challa in an episode of What If. Drax's skin tone was changed from green in the comics to the light gray we see in the movie as to avoid similarities to the Hulk. Amanda Seyfried was offered the role of Gamora first, but turned it down because she didn't want to sit in the makeup chair for hours. Lupita Nyong'o also auditioned before the role went to Zoe Saldana. James Gunn came up with Rocket's secret tragic backstory while writing Guardians 1, but he wouldn't reveal it until Guardians 3 in 2023. And he said that it was hard to find a voice actor who could handle the speed, heart, and humor of Rocket. I guess Bradley Cooper fit the bill. Gunn crafted the character of Yondu with Michael Rooker in mind, and on-screen cameos in the film include James Gunn, Lloyd Kaufman, and Stan Lee, as well as voice cameos from Nathan Fillion, Rob Zombie, and Seth Green. Filming began in July 2013 in London at Shepperton Studios and Longcross Studios. London's Millennial Bridge served as a location for Xandar, and Gunn tried to do as many of the effects as possible practically. The prison set, for example, was made with 350,000 pounds of steel. That said, the movie has 2,750 visual effects shots, meaning 90% of the movie includes at least some CGI. Rocket and Groot were created with a mix of motion capture and CGI, and James Gunn's brother, Sean Gunn, provided the on-set performance of Rocket. Gamora, Drax, Yondu, and Nebula's looks were all done with makeup, each requiring the actors to sit in the makeup chair for roughly 4 hours a day. The makeup team created 1,000 prosthetic makeup applications and 2,000 molds of different colored aliens for the film. And speaking of Nebula, Karen Gillan said she based her performance on a simultaneous impression of Clint Eastwood and Marilyn Monroe. Sculptor Brian Muir, who created Darth Vader's mask in Star Wars, worked on the film. Filming wrapped in October 2013, and its budget came out to roughly $200 million. Groot's CGI design and movement took the better part of a year to create, and Vin Diesel recorded I Am Groot in multiple languages for all of the international releases. James Gunn and Joss Whedon were responsible for casting Josh Brolin as Thanos, and the decision to put Howard the Duck in the post-credit scene came very late in the post-production process. The Power Stone was initially supposed to be red in the film, but when Marvel told Gunn that the Reality Stone in Thor: The Dark World was going to be red, they changed it to purple instead, which Gunn liked more. The trailer received 22 million views in its first 24 hours, and sales of Hooked on a Feeling soared by 700% the following day. The line, "What a bunch of a-holes," was originally supposed to be only in the trailer, but it played so well, Gunn put it in the movie. Guardians of the Galaxy opened on 4,080 screens in the US on August 1st, 2014, and it was the widest August release in history up until that point. It made $94 million opening weekend, before going on to gross $773 million worldwide total, making it the third highest grossing movie of 2014, behind Transformers: Age of Extinction and The Hobbit: The Battle of the Five Armies. Deadline reported that the movie turned a profit of $204 million. The soundtrack would hit #1 on the Billboard 200 albums chart, and in its first year, the home video release would generate $115 million in sales. Critics love the movie. Today, 92% of the 340 reviews assessed by Rotten Tomatoes are positive. It was nominated for 2 Oscars, Best Makeup and Best Visual Effects, losing to Grand Budapest Hotel and Interstellar, respectively. The soundtrack was also nominated for a Grammy. In August of 2014, Marvel held a special screening of the movie at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, and Chris Pratt dressed up as Star-Lord to meet the kids. The success of Guardians Volume 1 led to its own franchise, including Volume 2 in 2017, a holiday special in 2022, and Volume 3 in 2023, as well as character appearances in the Avengers movies and Thor: Love and Thunder. And earlier this year, Chris Pratt said that it would be likely he would return as Star-Lord at some point in the future.